Hey everyone, it's Sensei Victoria Whitfield here, your journey partner in business, welcoming you back to episode 64 of the Journeypreneur Podcast. This is your source for channeled holistic stress management techniques, guidance, inspiration, and motivation to stay on your path to rapid financial ascension and massive impact as a conscious entrepreneur. So the title of this podcast episode is The Biggest Secret to Running a Profitable Podcast. And oh my goodness, I have someone special here to share his wisdom with you. My friend, Jamie Atkinson, and he runs a podcast community on Facebook. You can go and check him out, called Podcasting 101. And for his podcast, they're on a mission to hit $1 million by January. And by the way, right now it's September and he's rocking it out. We were just talking about how he's about to launch something totally new, and I'm so excited for him. He helps entrepreneurs create profitable podcasts in 60 days or less, and he's known for launching several top 200 podcasts. So Jamie, I just want to say thank you so much for being present today and agreeing to be on the podcast. It's so good to have you.
Hey, Victoria, I'm super happy to be on. It's kind of funny. We were talking before and it didn't seem like that long ago that you were coming on my show, which was right when we were getting started with our podcast. And it's been a crazy journey the last 5 months. We've been doing some fun stuff, but yeah, I'm really excited to, talk to your community today and help them out and try and see if I can bring some value.
Oh, yeah, totally. And I have to say, ever since I've been on your podcast, it's been fun having other people coming to me left and right and saying, I loved your episode of Jamie's Entrepreneur Junkie podcast. It was so good. It was so unexpected. We had a ton of fun, and it was all because you let me rip. So thank you for that.
I love that as a podcast host. You basically just get to ask questions and sit back and, you don't have to do a lot, right? Like your guests can do all the good stuff, which is fantastic. And, all you got to do is get some people with interesting stories and it's pretty fun, right?
Yeah. And so I'm curious, how do you pick the people to come on your podcast? Is it just coming from networking, or are you doing the research, or is it intuitive? Like, how do you come up with good people to come on the podcast? Yeah.
Well, that's a good question, because one of the biggest things that a lot of the people that we speak to, the first question they have is usually when they start a brand new podcast is, well, Jamie, I don't know who to bring on my show. And, one of the first things that you want to try and understand when you want to create a profitable podcast is really focus on, well, who is my show for? Like, what is the purpose? Who am I trying to help? And what's the value that I'm trying to bring people? Because I see so many people, Victoria, and they'll have a business that does one thing, and then they have a podcast which speaks to a completely different person. For example, yes. I know some people who they say run a Facebook ad agency for chiropractors, and then they go and make a Facebook ads podcast, which is really only appealing to marketers. And then, they're looking at that and they're saying, well, I'm not sure why I'm not able to get momentum. And the truth is you have to be congruent, right? You have to have a podcast that's in alignment with your business if you want to be successful. And what we help people to really understand from the very get-go is, how do you set up your podcast in the right way so that you're attracting your dream customers to your show? And then what's cool about that is once you start to figure that out, it makes picking your guests really easy. So, for example, in your business, Victoria, you do all sorts of cool stuff, right? So who's your dream customer? Let's do a live example here on the air. Who is the person that if you had, the best thing in the world, who would be that person that you would want to serve in your business?
Holy moly. Oh, I love this. Okay. So my ideal customer is the mostly internet-based coach. So people who do video coaching. It doesn't really matter in what what industry in particular, but those who are interested in personal coaching. And it's especially those who have an element to their business of mindset and are interested also in giving back or paying it forward. So that I would have to say is my ideal person. You may get more specific, or tell me, was that good?
That's super. So if you've got that person in your mind, so it's somebody who's a coach, somebody that is already into mindset, then the best thing you can do for wanting to try and attract people who are your ideal customer to your show is actually to interview people who are your ideal customer. And you want to create a topic on your show, which is something that those people will be interested for. And that's what's cool about the Journeypreneur podcast, right? Like you bring people on all the time to talk about mindset and different business tactics and all of these different things. So what you're doing is you're actually interviewing people on your show who could be a good fit for your business. And that's one of the first mistakes most people make. So good job with doing it the right way, by the way. So what happens then is once you've figured out, okay, who am I actually trying to attract to my business? Then it becomes really easy to go and pick who you want your guest to be, because there's two things that you can do. The first thing you can do is you can actually go and speak directly to somebody who would be a good fit for your business. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing you can do is you can go and talk to somebody who has a network of people who are your ideal client. So for example, I might interview you, Victoria, and you might not be my ideal customer, but you might have an email list of 2,000 people that have my ideal customer in there. So what I'm going to try and do is build a relationship with you, and then at some time in the future, we can then potentially do some kind of partnership where my product can then flow through, your list and to your customers. So that's the first thing, when it comes to figuring out who kind of your ideal customer is. And when it comes to kind of creating a profitable podcast, I speak to so many people that are like, Jamie, well, are you doing it through ads? Are you doing it through sponsorships? How are you actually making money through the podcast? Because I don't know if you think about this, Victoria, but most people think that to have a successful podcast, you have to have a lot of downloads, right? Is that what you think? I know a lot of people at home kind of think that as well, right?
For sure. Yeah. That's, you think, oh, I got to get this number of downloads or this number of followers. And then it's all of a sudden successful out of hot nowhere.
Yeah. But the truth is, like a lot of the time with any kind of business, whether you're on Instagram, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on a podcast or in Facebook, really the amount of downloads and the amount of listeners you have is just a vanity metric. It's just telling you how many people are listening to your episodes. It doesn't tell you necessarily how many customers you're able to generate. So, what we teach in our program, and we have a program called Podcast Profit Lab. And what's fun about that is that, we show people how that they can make money from their podcast, even if they don't get a single download on their show. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think the top of my head just exploded. I need to hear more.
So here's the biggest thing that most people think about. So when it comes to monetizing a podcast, and if anybody's listening at home right now who wants to start a show, I just want to preface this by saying that creating a profitable podcast isn't just about making the money. And that kind of sounds counterintuitive, but let me explain. So most people want to start a podcast, and the average person will only ever complete 7 episodes before they give up. And you'll find there's about 80% of podcasters who do this. They start, they do a launch, they get excited, they create everything. And then by the end of the 7th episode, they're like, donezo, like there's no more after that. And, and then you also get other people who they do the podcast and they do it for a long time. They get through like 40, 50, 60, 70 episodes. And then they get 6 months in and they're on episode 70 and it's, it's tiring. They're, doing editing, they're putting these episodes out and they look at what they're doing and they're saying, wow, what is this doing for my business? Am I, generating customers? Am I making any money from it? And then they end up quitting. And both of those things are absolutely terrifying, because if you just keep going long enough with a podcast and you continue to do the right behaviors and do the right thing, podcasts become exponentially more powerful once you've had them for a couple of years. And that's kind of crazy to think about. But one of the biggest problems that I see, and really what our company is all about helping people do, is giving you a way that you can continue to podcast for a very, very long time. And we do that by showing you how to make money. Because here's the thing, if you can make money from a podcast in your first 60 days or, in your first 6 months, if you're just starting it now, if you can make money from it, it means that you can keep going. It means you can hire a team. It means that you can reinvest. You can double down. You can put more content out if you want to. And it allows you to continue to grow. But more than anything, it gives you validation that what you're doing is something that's actually helping you in your business, which is super important, right?
What I love about that is how there's the vision of how your podcast can feed the business and can feed itself. And listening to you describe those two different types of people, oh my goodness, I think I fall into the second one. Yeah. And I already have a profitable business. And so, my coach, our coach says, do a podcast. I'm like, all right, do a podcast. And here we are, it's episode 64.
Yeah, and we listen to our coaches, and I'm a huge Russell Brunson fan. I'm a huge Steve Larson fan. And what do they say? They say, publish, go put content out, do an episode. But what nobody tells you is how that's going to help your business.
Yes.
And you go out there on blind faith from your mentors and your coaches to do the thing they tell you to do, but without any real vision or plan of what you're going to do to make money from it, or what you're going to do to leverage it in your business. And if you've put that in perspective of a business, that's a bit like somebody saying to you, hey, Victoria, you should go and build a business. What you should do is go and sit in front of a desk and, work for 8 hours every day. And go and do that every day for 100 days, and you'll figure it out, right? Ooh. That's the equivalent of the guidance, right? It's like, all right, well, just go and do it and you'll figure it out. And while that's good, what I find is it's actually much better to give people a framework and a plan to follow so that they can have a very clear vision of, oh, okay, so if I want to make money from my podcast, or if I want to grow my podcast to a very big level, or if I want to, find new customers and bring them into my email list, or whatever the goal is. I have one guy right now in my program, and his goal is to become a speaker on stages. And his strategy with the podcast is geared around getting him to win more stages. It's getting him in front of the right people to do that. So whatever your goal is within the podcast, what we're all about is helping you to understand, like, okay, well, what is the framework to actually go and do that and be successful with it? And that makes a lot more sense, right?
Totally. And having the framework is that way, there's so much more structure behind it. And it gives it a space, like a real space in my business. It's one thing to be promoting the work that I do by, printing up business cards and like throwing them wherever you can. Throw them in the bathroom, throw them in people's desks, throw them in people's, wherever you can. And it's another to print up a business card and hand it into the hand of someone who says, hey, I really want to work with you. What's your contact information? Like someone to have a structure behind it rather than putting things out there willy-nilly is really empowering, and it makes better use of my time. Yeah.
And I've got to be honest with you, like when I first started the podcast, I had no idea how to do this. I'm just going to go figure it out because, and a little bit of my story, Victoria, but for anyone that's listening at home, back in January of this year, I was dead broke, and like I say, we're in September now, we're literally 7 months along, which is crazy in terms of how far we got. But, I was in Thailand with my girlfriend, and we've been traveling full time for about a year and a half. And, we were struggling. I was on like my 7th failed business. We've been trying all of these different things. And, I had to make this decision where I realized I wasn't surrounded by people who were going to lift me up and empower me. I didn't have friends. I didn't have family. I didn't have anybody around me because we were traveling, and I didn't have support. So I was like, man, I need to do something different. So I ended up, booking a flight to go to Funnel Hacking Live in, Nashville. So we flew from Thailand all the way to Nashville. We bought these hotel tickets. Like we probably spent about $3,000-$4,000 just to get to the damn place. And at the time, I remember like when I got there at Funnel Hacking Live, after paying for all of the tickets and the flights and everything, I remember I had about $1,000 in my bank account. I think it was a real low number, or not much money at all. And we went to this event, and what I realized was, I started speaking to all of these people, and if I was being honest with myself, I was walking around and telling people that I was successful. I was like, hey, I've got this agency, we're helping dentists, at the time, that's what I was doing. And people were asking me, and what I wasn't telling them was that, I had one client who hadn't paid me for 3 months because we weren't able to get results. I hadn't told them that I'd had so many failed businesses and that, I'd been using my savings and we were nearly broke. I was telling this kind of half truth. And I came into the conference, and one of the very first speeches I listened to was by a guy called Nicholas Biley. And he said, in the speech, he said, your mess becomes your message. When you put your truth out there to people and you tell people where you're really at, people connect with you, they vibe with you. And man, like that hit me so hard. Like when I came out of the conference, I just started speaking to people straight away after that speech. And they're like, hi, who are you? And I'm like, hey, I'm Jamie, and my business is failing and I don't know what to do. And I just wanted to come here because I need to be surrounded by like-minded entrepreneurs. I need you guys around me. And, it was so freeing. And I just let this all out, and I just started to tell people this like unapologetic truth about myself. And it was empowering, and I felt connections to these people and everything started to really fit. And then I ended up leaving this event, and right at the end of the event, we ended up signing up for some crazy expensive coaching program. It's like $30,000. Didn't have any money. Like the first payment was $2,500. I had to go into debt to go and get that payment, which was kind of crazy. The first moment I came back from the event, I had another 21 days before my next $2,500 payment came out. And I had a client ring up, my one client, who said, "Hey, Jamie, I'm going to need a refund on that $2,000 I paid you." Those first few months were terrifying. But, the reason I told that story is that that's what led me to originally starting the podcast. So I started the show and my podcast, The Entrepreneur Junkie Movement. The very first episode you'll hear on there is me saying, how $30,000 worth of debt is probably a bad idea, but actually it helped me to get through a lot of these challenges. But I started to document, I started to talk to people about what was happening. And what was fun is that as I did more and more of the podcast, and as I started to tell these kind of stories that I hadn't been telling people before, as I kind of held all of this kind of shame that I had inside of me and just let it out and told people started to get connected with me. And as the podcast grew and as things changed, I started to learn more and more about how you can use a podcast to really connect with people. And what's interesting, Victoria, is that a lot of people talk to me and they say, Jamie, what's the tactic? What's the strategy? What's the thing I can do to get a leg up on my competition when it comes to iTunes, or how do I rank, or how do I get the algorithm right? And what it really boils down to, and what we kind of show people when they come through our program, is that to have a podcast that's successful and profitable, it's really about building relationships. It's really about, asking yourself, who do I really want to work with? And how do I get those people to become attracted to me? How do I have conversations with these people? How do I speak to people who are connected with more people that are like that? And you've probably found this, Victoria. What's great about podcasts is that you do have these really profound and amazing conversations. Like, people really connect with you. Like when we first were on the podcast together, after that, I felt like I knew you so well because you told this amazing story about how you got like nearly crushed by a window, and I was like, you're happy and go lucky and super energetic. And then you got to that part in your story and you kind of got a little somber and a little quiet. And I thought you were going to cry at one point. And that's really, really powerful, because when you share that vulnerability with people, there's a closeness, there's a connection that happens there. And if you're very, very purposeful about this, and this is kind of what we teach in our frameworks, is we show you how to build these really powerful, meaningful relationships with people, but with a purpose, with people that are actually going to help you move forward in your business. I was speaking to a good friend of mine yesterday, actually. We're back home in Philadelphia, which is where my girlfriend's from. And he was talking to me about his football channel that he's running, and, he's, meeting all of these great people. And he said, Jamie, what I'm trying to do is, when I go to these football games, when I go to these matches, I'm trying to talk and build relationships with people. And I said to him, like, dude, that's exactly the right thing that you're doing. The only thing you're doing wrong is that you're building relationships with anybody that you meet. The way to do it is to do exactly the same thing, but purposefully with people that is going to help you grow your business. And the truth is, Victoria, it's not going to be every single person. Like, we're on this show right now. I had you on my podcast. Like, we've built a relationship and we've built a connection. And, I might not sell you into my program. Like, you might not buy my product. But the truth is, like, the relationship we form, one, there's a certain level of association there. So if anybody's heard our podcast episode together, if they know, like, and trust you, and they see that you've come on my podcast, there's an association there. They're like, oh, Victoria trusts Jamie. Like, they're together on the podcast, right? So even just by being on these shows together, you get that association. But also what's more powerful is that when you're very, very purposeful with these relationships, you start to build this trust and this there. And, as we launch our program and things like that, like, I'm super confident that there'll probably be a moment in the future where somebody says to you, Victoria, man, I really wish I could run a podcast and work out how to make money. And you're going to say, oh, I've got my friend Jamie. He actually teaches just that, right? Like, there's going to be those moments where that happens. So what I always tell people is that you don't need to overcomplicate it. What I always tell anybody in any business is, if you want to find success, go and find the person that can show you the framework to follow to be successful. But more than that, just remember that in business and things you're doing, a lot of the time it's really just about relationships. If you can build powerful relationships and you can do it sincerely, and this is what I say to people a lot of the time. It's like, even though you're building a purposeful relationship, it doesn't have to be manipulative. Like a lot of people think it's like, oh, you're going to go and build a relationship with that person on purpose because you want to go and sell your product to somebody that they know. And that's kind of like a broke mindset, right? Like you can still go into these circles with these people that you want. You can still build amazing relationships. And the truth is, you should have confidence in your product enough that you know that. For me, I'm like, I know I need to get my product into as many people's hands as possible because I genuinely believe it's going to change people's lives. Like I've seen people come through my program who have newfound confidence. They're able to get in front of the microphone. They're able to connect better with people in events. And I see this transformation in them. And it really, I mean, it gets me emotional. Like I was crying at this conference a couple of days ago that I was at because I could see these people like flourishing and blossoming right in front of my eyes, which is incredible. But when you believe in your product truly, there isn't any of that, oh, you're trying to do something to get over. You should be empowered to really share your product with as many people as possible because it's your duty to get it out to people. And that's what we try and teach inside of the program. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's gorgeous. I love that. And it's so powerful to hold that value of it's your duty to get it out there. And, if we're in the type of business or type of line of work that we really believe in what we're doing and it's our life's purpose, there should be no shame around promotion and sales. Like to set
selling.
Right. Oh my God.
Like people are terrified. And I say to people now, like I used to be terrified if somebody said to me, hey, I'm a dentist and I need help with marketing. I was like, oh crap, I'm going to have to try and sell them something and it embarrasses me. And like, because I didn't believe in what I was selling. But now I'm in the podcast space. I'm like, somebody talks to me about a podcast. I'm like, oh my God, you need what I'm selling because it's going to change you. Like it's going to be amazing. And I have no shame in that. I'm super proud to sell it because I know that the product that I'm going to put in their hands is going to change their life if they use it the right way. So I think a lot of people are scared. They're scared of selling. They think it's a terrible thing to do. They feel like they're manipulating someone or they're doing something. Like you don't want to convince somebody of anything, but you can persuade people to buy a product if it's something that they want to buy. Like anytime you have a sales conversation, you shouldn't try to be convincing them to buy your product. Really what you need to be doing is persuading them to buy for their own reasons, like understanding the reason that they need it and then helping them to get that if it's the right thing for them. It's so important.
Oh my goodness. Because the more that you're able to help them see the reasons that they should have the thing, the better that they're able to feel served. They can move past whatever has been in the way of them. They're able to finally have an increased quality of life or to have an increased reach or have better health or whatever.
Well, Victoria, like one thing that I was writing an email on the plane home yesterday after being at this event and I was feeling, a little bit somber and trying to reflect on, what I'd really felt at this event being surrounded by these people. And one thing that really stuck with me was it's like entrepreneurship is all about like changing your like personal development. Like my journey as a human being and from the point that I started this journey to where I am today, my personal growth has been like monumental, like to a scary level, like to the point where like, people that knew me before are like, wow, you're like so different in the way that you treat people and the way you act. And this whole journey of entrepreneurship, and it's really interesting because your podcast is the Journeypreneur Podcast, right? Like it's the journey you go on is as much about personal development as it is about building a business. Like your business will grow at the rate that you grow personally. And, I was listening to Caleb Maddox speak recently, and he said that in business, you don't have business problems, you have personal problems that manifest in your business. And that was super like a mind-blowing thing to me because it's so right. Like as these people go through these entrepreneurship programs, and I watch people who are through our program, the people that are growing the fastest and the people that are building these businesses, they're the people that are growing themselves. Like you can see it in the way they are as people. And I think that's really interesting to think about. It's interesting to consider like, well, am I growing as a person? Like, what is it that I'm trying to do? And a lot of the fears that I had about, I used to be really worried about what people thought about me. It's why I was lying to myself and other people on Instagram for so long, pretending like my business was rosy and fine, where really I was like failing left, right, and center, because I was worried about what other people were going to think. Now I'm unapologetic about it. I'm like, this is just where I am. I'll tell people my vulnerable things that are happening, and I don't mind sharing that because I understand that being vulnerable allows other people to be vulnerable back, and that's where real change happens. And I just find it really fascinating that as we go through this journey, it's just so much about personal growth as much as it is about growing a business. It's like money's the byproduct. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's no such thing as coincidence here. I'm a lifelong student of different world religions. I myself don't really subscribe to one in particular, but I find the philosophy is fascinating. And one of the teachings in Buddhism is that there are 3 vehicles to enlightenment. Now, by the way, what is enlightenment? It's just realizing potential. That's all it is. That's what enlightenment is realizing your potential.
That's so cool.
So there's 3 vehicles to it. The first one is suffering. How much suffering can you endure? This is what the Buddha was teaching. And then secondly, then there's pleasure. How much good stuff, how much pleasure can you endure? And then the third one is actually service. Service is a vehicle to enlightenment. So how interesting that we are as entrepreneurs in this, system called business. We are going day after day after day, learning how to best serve others, right? And the more that we hone our ability to serve others, the more we have to kind of craft ourselves to be open to serving others or to come from the heart. When you're describing, Jamie, being able to open and vulnerably share your story, the thing that gives you the ability to do that is what's called courage. The root word of courage is cœur, which in French means heart. The more that you're connecting and dropping into your heart, the more you're able to serve people. And that's what's really igniting over and over and over again, these leaps in personal development. And I know for myself, I am unrecognizable. I think Elisa Nichols, she's talks about how she's just unrecognizable. The more that you sunk into being able to serve other people, the more there's pieces of, I'll put it on me, pieces of myself that I've laid down so that I can open up and help others on their way. It's a beautiful thing. It's a very human thing, but I just thought I'd drop that in there.
Yeah, no, and I love that. And it's really interesting because when you say that, like enduring pain, enduring pleasure, serving people, like I've experienced more pain in this last 12 months than I ever have probably in my life. Like, it's ridiculous the amount of times that I failed, but getting okay with that. And, and people all the time talk about in the marketing game, it's like about marketing stamina. How far can you keep going when things aren't going right? And, I always think of that picture. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's a picture of, 2 wolves, and one's like a baby wolf and he's got 1 arrow in him and he's got like the crossed out eyes like he died. And then you've got the bigger wolf next to him who he has like 19 arrows in his back, but he's standing tall. And the difference is just about how much can you endure that pain. So I think it was really interesting that you shared that about the whole Buddhism thing and enlightenment. Wow,
Totally. So here we are walking this path. How long can we stay on the journey? How long and why? Why would we stay on this journey to rapid financial ascension and massive impact? What could be the point? I'm curious, Jamie, and maybe this is where we'll leave off for now. Is there something in particular when you had that feeling, like say when you were at maximum pain earlier this year? What was the thing that caused you to step forward instead of step back? Like what brought you back into the ring? Yeah.
This was huge. And probably the biggest, most painful moment this year was when I signed up for that program. It was when I was minus 3,500 in my bank account. I had no more credit and I had 14 days left and another payment of $2,500 was going to come out. And I had no customers. Like, that week was the most painful week of my life. And what really allowed me to get through it was just that I recognized that all my life up to that point, I'd always had a backup plan. Like, I'd always have 1 foot in the ring and 1 foot out. Well, I've got this, here just in case this one doesn't work, or I've got, this is my backup plan in case that can't work out. And really, for the first time in my life, that was the first time where I'd gone all in on something. And I was like, if this doesn't work, I can't eat. And that's intense. Like, that's a lot of faith that you put in yourself and in a program to say, man, if this doesn't work, then I'm going to be screwed. And, I was in the US at the time. I'm not from the US. Like, if I didn't have any money, I couldn't buy a plane ticket out. If I stayed too long, I'd get deported, get thrown in jail, like all of these consequences of not being able to make that money. But what happened and what someone told me was like, Jamie, the obstacle that's in your path, like, you can't go around that obstacle. You have to face it, and you won't be able to reach the goal where you are right now. But when you go and you push and you fail against that obstacle, and the visualization is, I always think of it like this massive boulder that you're pushing up a hill. You're not going to be able to push that boulder up the hill when you first get started. But what you do is you slap into it, and you slap into it again, and it hits you in the face, and you fall down, and you slap into it again. But what happens is, as you do that, you learn and you become this better person in terms of being able to overcome that boulder. And then eventually you're able to push it to the top of that hill. And that kind of visualization for me is all about, when you want to get to a goal, and, and it's funny because we started this episode saying that I'm on a mission to do $1 million by January. To date, we've only done about $70,000. Now, that's a lot of money to a couple of people, but, right now, I don't have the skill set I need to reach that goal of $1 million. But by having that goal, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and try and achieve that. And I'm going to fail, and I'm going to hit this boulder. I'm going to hit it again and again and again. And by doing that, and by failing and by learning, that's what's going to give me the skill set so that by January, I can hit that $1 million. Like, there's no other way for me to get to that goal other than by trying and failing and growing from that. And that's as much of a mindset thing as anything that's out there. But, in life, when these situations happen now, if it feels painful, if it feels like something that like hurts me inside, if my stomach goes weak, if it goes into knots, I know in that situation that I need to lean into it. I actually need to go harder towards that thing. Whereas before I would have shied away and gone, oh, that's painful, I'm going to go back to comfort. And that's a really, really difficult thing for a lot of people to do, because our whole life we're trained not to do that. We're trained to go for the safety. We're trained to go to the other way. But when you lean into that pain and you let yourself feel it and you try and overcome it, massive, massive growth happens. And I've experienced that in such a short space of time. And, and it was crazy because, I spoke to my friends, and, before this program, every month for the last 12 months of me being an entrepreneur, and I've been an entrepreneur now for about 2 years. And, up until that point, I probably earned $1,000, $2,000, $1,000, $1,500. Like, it was the same amount of money I earned every single month, month in, month out, for about 18 months. I put myself in this pain position. And then, a couple of months, the first 2 months of the program, I didn't earn any money. And then bam, May, we did $11,000. June, we did $13,000. The month after that, we did $25,000. This huge rapid growth in terms of what we're doing. And we're still refining and we're still trying to make it better. But the growth happened because I pushed against that obstacle that we're kind of facing. And like right now, I'm not at the level where we want to get to. But if you have these lofty financial goals, or even if it's not financial, even if it's a different type of goal, maybe you want to serve people or whatever it is, you really have to think about, okay, well, what is the obstacle in my way? And how can I lean into that to allow me to grow so that I can reach that goal at the end?
Oh, this is so good. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh, Jamie, as I'm witnessing what you're saying, well, for one, you're on fire, and I love it. And it made me think of one time while I was watching Stephen Larson speak, and he said, the reason why I have such intense goals is because I break myself on my goal. Like, it's like, this is so good. It was reminding me when you were saying that to lean into the pain, there's genius there when you're able to do it. That just comes out. It's there, that potential's there, but we got to activate it by leaning in.
But it's not easy. And that's why most people don't win at this game. But if you can unlock that and really understand that, like Steve says, you've got to break yourself on that goal. It sounds painful. It is painful. It's the most, it's the most painful thing you can experience in your life, but that's what allows you to kind of grow. And, we started this episode off talking about the biggest secret to running a podcast. And we've kind of talked about the mindset stuff, which is super powerful. But really, and this is what I say to people is that the tactics, the framework, everything like that, like you can go and buy that in a program. Like we have a program, you can go follow the framework, you can follow that advice. And if you follow that advice, you're going to have success. And, the biggest secret that we always talk about is understand that it's really about relationships in terms of what you're doing. But the truth is, without that really, really important mindset component, without understanding that belief of I'm going to have to break myself on this goal if I want to have success, you're always going to struggle to go through it. It's why so many people buy courses and never complete it. Do you know what the average is?
No, tell me.
Courses?
What?
5%.
5%? Wait, what do you mean?
I mean, everybody who goes and buys a course for $1,000, for $10,000, for $30,000, only 5% of those people complete the whole course.
What?
Why is that?
Wow.
We get distracted. We find it too painful. But those 5% of people who go all the way through, they're the people that are leaning into the pain. It's difficult. You have to put the time in. You have to do the program. And what's cool about this is that if you do it the right way, and if you get that key mindset component right, then it doesn't matter what you pick. It could be a podcast. It could be e-com. It could be agency. It could be Reiki healing. It could be mindset. Like whatever it is, if you can unlock that mindset piece and you can just endure long enough and have that stamina to keep going, then you'll be successful. But it's unlocking that first piece. And it's why, I'm a big fan of Russell Brunson, but the very first thing he talks about in any of his programs is belief. You have to understand that you can actually hit that goal. You have to believe that it's possible. And, and this was the thing for me, because, a week ago at the start of this conference, we were asked to write down our goal. And I wrote $500,000 by January 2020. And then I thought, when I listened to Myron Golden talking about belief and understanding that, most people doubt their beliefs and believe their doubts, right? It's the wrong way around. You should believe your beliefs and doubt your doubts, right? Like that's the way.
Yes.
You get it wrong. And that unlocked something in me. And I thought, you know what, if I just believe that I can hit $1 million. And I said to myself, if I believe in these frameworks and these frameworks are going to give me success, and then I believe in my ability to push myself through pain and to follow a framework, then why can I not believe that I can do $1 million by January? And then I said that to myself. I said, I'm only limiting myself by believing I can get to 500,000. So why not make it 1 million? And when you have that belief, and now the fact that I believe that that's possible, I'm taking massive action to make that happen. And I'm just doing more and more and more and more to make sure I can put it out there. But it all starts with that mindset piece. And that's what I love about this entrepreneurship game, is that in such a short space of time, like 9 months ago, I didn't know a thing about marketing. I hadn't done marketing degrees. I left school when I was 16. I was a sales guy. But now I feel more like a marketer as an identity than anything else. And you can learn it in such a short space of time. All it takes is finding a good framework, finding a good mentor, and then really understanding how to push yourself through to hit those goals.
Wow. So good. So good. Oh my goodness. Jamie, I could listen to you all day. In fact, I love. Yeah, you have a podcast. Yeah. So tell me, like, where can I and all of my listeners go to celebrate you? Because there's so much to celebrate. There's so much wisdom. You have an incredible community around you, and you're just pouring into them through the community and through your podcast and more. Where can we go to celebrate you online? Where can we find you?
Well, one of my favorite places for you guys to head to is my own podcast, which is the Entrepreneur Junkie Movement. I would encourage all of you, if you're a fan of Victoria, which you obviously are if you're listening to this show, go and check out the episode we did together. I can't remember when it was, Victoria. I think it was like episode 30 or something like that. Scroll through, you'll see her name. We did 3 episodes back to back, so you guys really get your values worth. They're about 10 minutes each. But if you type in Entrepreneur Junkie Movement onto your podcast app, you'll find me there. And then the other place we are is if you go onto Facebook and you want to learn more about podcasting and you want to really understand about how can you launch a podcast, how can you have success, and you really want to understand how to launch a great one and be profitable, then jump into our free Facebook group. You can type in Podcasting 101, or you guys can also head to www.joinpodcasting101.com. And, give me a shout out when you get in there. Drop a message down the bottom. Tag me at Jamie Atkinson. Tell me you came from after listening to this episode. And what I'll do is any of you guys who come from this episode, I'll make sure to give you one of my latest pieces of content for free. It's a course that we've been running. We sell it for $27, but any of you guys who come from Victoria, just tag me in it. Let me know you came from there, and I'll make sure to give you that for free as well.
Yay! Oh, so good. Thank you. Oh my goodness. So head on over there, everyone. And by the way, while you're at it, if this is the first episode that you're listening in the Journeypreneur Podcast, welcome and thank you so much for listening. Make sure that you subscribe on iTunes, give us a 5-star review, and drop in there what was your favorite insight from Jamie in this episode. I love hearing your stories. I love reading through all of the reviews. It's so wonderful to get to see the insights there. And so that's going to be it for today's podcast episode. And as always, please remember to enjoy the journey. Do not lose your glow as you grow in life and business. And we'll see you in the next podcast episode. Bye for now.